Hello again from the underground. It's an exciting time for City of Treason as we get ready to release this new record. You've heard me talk a little bit about the backstory on the making of this record, but I wanted to bring you into the real why, about why we're doing this. Before Scott and I had City of Treason, we were in a band called Divided Mind with a drummer named Tony and a singer named Mark. It was my first band, and Mark was truly a mentor to me. Some of my fondest memories in life are writing and making music with Mark. And shortly before the pandemic, Mark passed away from complications from a stroke. And when I was at the funeral, his wife Susie gave me his handwritten lyrics and said, "Mark wanted you to have these." Soon after that, my wife and I moved into a new home, and I was going through boxes, and I found a tape, and that tape was an album that we hadn't finished nearly 20 years earlier. So I spoke with Scott and Nick from City of Treason and Tony from Divided Mind, and we resolved together to finish that record of the Divided Mind music. It took nearly 3 years, but we finished the record, and that's the one that we'll be releasing later this summer, called Divided Mind. And that spurred everything that has happened since. During that process, while a lot of people around the country and around the world were going through a lot of struggles, my family was going through a lot of struggles of its own, like the death of my uncle and my younger brother, Lewis. And anyone who knew my brother knows what kind of character he was, what kind of person he was, how big a heart he had, but also what kind of musician he was. And so not only did we complete this record in memory of Mark, but we did a tribute song to my brother Lou that will be coming out after the record, roughly around the 2-year anniversary of his passing. I'm a very blessed man, and I know that. But, I've been through a lot, and music has helped carry me through, music and family. The most important things in my life that there's ever been. I don't take anything I have for granted. But I'm the only surviving member of the original lineup of Divided Mind, because there were a couple guys before Tony and Scott. And so it weighs heavily on me that I'm the only one here to play music among those guys. And there are many other musicians and friends that I've had that have passed on as well. I'd like to acknowledge those great musicians for their impact on my life, and in no particular order. Sean Jeffries, who was a bass player in Divided Mind. He was the first one, and he survived by his beautiful daughter, Violet, who I haven't seen in many years, but I understand she's a talented musician just like her father. Steve Shermatz, who was the first drummer in Divided Mind and one of the most hilarious motherfuckers I've ever met in my life. And we had some great memories, and I miss him a lot. A drummer named Rami Abbasi that Mark and I played with, that he died in a car accident in California not long after Mark and I closed the doors on Divided Mind, and I'm sure he's very missed by his family. Matt Goldberg, who was one of the finest drummers I ever knew, and played in a great band called Wallop that Mark and I and Scotty and Tony, we all played together at the same venues, and I miss Matt. Matt was one of my favorite drummers to watch. I love watching him play, and I had the privilege of playing with him a few times, and would have loved to have gotten him in one of my bands. But he suffered from addiction, and I think that is what ultimately took his life, as it did for my brother's drummer, Mike LaChance. He was a talented guy, and my brother loved him dearly, and he would go on to pass away at a very young age as well. I mentioned Mark and how much he meant to me, Mark Nichols. Just one of the most unique and powerful characters I've ever met in my life, and anyone who ever met Mark could tell you the same. And of course, my beloved brother Lewis, who is one of the most sublimely talented musicians I've ever met. He is missed by everyone, and he's survived by certainly his family, but also his wife Tanya, who I know misses him terribly. So I'm going to keep going with this for as long as I can. It's obviously not easy to even get through talking about it on camera with no one else here, but I appreciate you watching, and stay tuned for what comes next, because we are just getting started.